This is my Halloween cat, Artemis. If you don't have a Halloween cat, what are you doing with your life? My special boy. Hi, welcome to Like My on the Cover. I'm Taylor, and today we're talking about how I organize all my outlining that I do before I write a novel. I actually have it right back here. So there are tons of methods that I hear that people use for their organization. They do like book Bibles, they do Scrivener, some people use like Google Docs, things like that. I like having a paper copy of everything so that I can have it out in my hand and while I'm doing something on the screen, and I like reading more of the physical copies. I also like doing it. Also, I'm just gonna be honest, I think somebody said that you end up being more creative when you handwrite, and even though that might not be true, I took it to heart, and so now I write everything on my line, which honestly I prefer anyway, and I don't know why, I just do. I prefer it. So I'm going to go over how I organize all of that, and then as I add the videos for Preptober where I am doing certain sections, like for example world building, I'll add that all in the eyes so you could find that, and then you could see almost exactly what I'm putting in these sections. I think honestly this is going to be a fairly quick video because I'm just showing you how I'm going to organize it all, and I keep it like this. Like this will never change. This is not for this book that I'm outlining right now, but for my last book draft. No, my last book, the first draft of my last book, everything that I figured out is in here. Things do get added as I go, and I refer to it all the time. So let's just take it through tab by tab. So I do use file folders. I have one like this. I have a purple one for a different one. I use different colors for different novels. They don't need to be huge. You don't need to have tons of like sections. I'm trying to see how many sections I honestly use. 1, 2, 3, 5 to 6-ish, depending on the kind of books you write. So, looking at it, this is how it looks. You'll see that I use a lot of Post-its to kind of organize it further. In this very front part here, this is where I have all my initial brainstorms and anything that doesn't specifically go with anything else. So any work that I've done on loose leaf paper or notebooks that I pulled out, I put here in that first front pocket. I have a draft tracker that I keep and I move to my newest work whenever I'm working on it. This is specifically battle titles and where those people are going to be going within the story. This is connected to my map and just mean like these are the people who are assigned a specific location and these are their characteristics. They're not main characters, but I'm going to be like referring back to it, so I have like a little chart like this. I'm almost afraid to show this because I don't know what half of this is, but this was my to-do, a lot of my brainstorming, names, everything I needed to do before my outlining was over. And then on the back, this is me, my nephew drew it on it, which you can tell. This is me like trying to figure out different names and stuff like that. In my last book, I did my brainstorming differently, so it will be different than how it looks this time, but that's what's in my first pouch. Also, one of my most important things is my outlining method, which is the 3 acts, 9 blocks, 27 chapter method, which I use pretty consistently and I love very much. And so I have just what each chapter kind of is and the explanation. This won't be always adhered exactly to. Like sometimes I might think that a certain twist needs 2 chapters, or maybe I think the midpoint needs, you know, more than one, or just something needs a little bit less. Like this is a general idea of the beats I want to be hitting as I go through, but won't always be exactly like this, although usually I adhere to it fairly well. This is going to be moving to my new folder for my new draft, because I move this between my folders whenever I'm working on them, so I always have it available to me. I suggest whatever your outlining method is, if you're doing Save the Cat, if you're doing a 3-block structure, whatever outlining method you're doing, I would suggest you have like a tangible piece of paper that explains it in a way that you understand in each of the areas where you are doing your outlining. The next section, and notably probably the most important, is my outlines. And you can see that I organize it even further by putting what chapters. So I make these little tabs out of Post-its and put what chapters each page will cover, so that at a glance I know, oh, 17 is here, I can just pull it out, that kind of thing. So here's how they look out. You can see chapters like 1 to 5, 6 to 10, things like that. The first chapters are a little bit sparser in information on how to get them because I'm less specific. And then as you see, like the last chapters are quite thicker. This is the method I did on my last draft. This draft, I'll be doing a slightly different method. I'm going to be using large index cards to kind of explain. And this is also so I can track different plot threads. But I'll be talking about that more in my like specifically outlining video. So once I finish that, you guys can go and see that. This video will come out before that one, but it'll be out before November. So yeah, I call it my chapter by chapter. I don't know why, because it's specifically like by chapter. Some people will outline based on scenes. So you'd have multiple scenes that would encompass, like less chapters in those amount of scenes. I like to do it based on chapter. It just helps me out a little bit more. Some chapters will have multiple scenes. Some will be focused on one thing. It just kind of depends, but this is how I would do it. And I think these post-its are a great addition so that at a glance, it's very easy to pull things out. So you don't have to pull everything out just to be able to see like one page. Like if I wanted to see this, I'd just be able to pull it out and I wouldn't have to look at anything else. If you don't have multiple plot threads or character beats, this method that I did, which is just write them all down on paper, could work for you still. For this book specifically, I have like 4 plots. Obviously 1 main plot and 3 subplots, but it's kind of a lot and I want to be able to put it all out and see how that works. So I think this method is going to be even better than this one, at least for me in this book, but this method could work for you. Great for my last book. I never had a problem. Next tab, which you can't see past the tabs for my outline, is realms. For my last book, I had multiple different realms. I chose to have a separate tab than just world building so that I could have a description of each realm more easily available, because a lot of the world building was of the world we were in. In the first one, we were only really in like 2 realms. One of them was the main one. And so the world building tab is all for like mainly that realm, whereas the realms tab has a little more information generally about the other realms, which we'll be expanding on in other books. So you wouldn't need that necessarily for your book, but you might have a section of world building that is more pertinent to what you're doing, specifically in your first book or something like that, and you could have a separate section for that. So here I just have like the brief world descriptions of each of the realms, and I'm not going to show you these because they like literally suck, but like very baseline pictures of how I pictured a certain thing happening. Like how a certain thing looked in my novel. And then I have this list of miscellaneous places. Anytime we went to a place, we just like passed a town or we randomly talked about something, it went on this. I could always check back to see where it was. I have it on my map, which I'm going to show you in the next category. So let's talk about world building. Okay, so in my world building tab, I have my map. I did this myself, obviously, you can tell because it's not very professional, but it was just for pure utility for me to understand where things were, because a lot of this book was spent traveling through multiple different places, and I kind of needed to know what the terrain was like there, and like also certain areas where we passed. So this is one of the things I pulled out a lot to kind of see where things were. This is also where we talked about weddings in the realm I was in, funerals, specific flora and fauna, you know, like how it looks, weather, because it's always cold in this realm, so weather was something we talked about. I talked about their biggest holiday or festival, and other things that are spoilery that I can't tell you. Baseline, what's your world look like? What are the cultural things? What are the like geographical, like terrain kind of stuff? That kind of stuff goes in this section. And then the last main section of this is my character outlines. So let's see if I can show that to you, because all my other tabs are getting in the way. Let's see what we can do. Aha! Characters. See? There's their names. Hello. Okay. So the character tab has all my character information, obviously. I'm going to go over exactly like my character profiles and things that I write for them so that I know everything. But just know I have 4 main characters. Each of them has like a full drawn out like character profile about everything about them. And then for other characters who are important to the plot, they're people that we see but they're not the main characters. I have a smaller version of a character profile that I write out for them. And then for characters that are seen maybe a couple times but not really important to the plot, I have just a list of all of them, my baseline description that I gave them, and like where we encounter them, like what they're doing. For example, a chef at like a certain place I have down here, and just generally like what he looked like. Those would be examples, and I add to that as I go through the stories, that I'm making sure that I'm not like mixing things up, if that makes sense. I'm just adding as I go. And in the rest of the areas, it kind of ends up as a free-for-all. Sometimes I'll keep like a notebook in there that I've been using to write down certain things during the story. Like for example, if I'm editing and I am writing as I go through my first draft of things that I know I need to be editing, that kind of thing. A lot of times it ends up being like first drafts of things that are moved and elsewhere and made to be more specific or added to that I've thought more of, or just generally like a dump of some things. So like anything that is like pertaining to this novel, this draft, will go towards the back. So yeah, that's how I organize all my outlining and novel things. As you can see, I do a lot of it before I start my novel, but I also keep adding to it as I do my novel, and I will refer to this in second drafts, third drafts, whatever, add to it as I go, things like that. My outlines won't change, but I will add like the more updated versions or the new things we've learned about characters as I go through. And then when the second book for this comes around, which I'm not there yet because I am doing draft 3 of this book, it will get its own folder like this, and I will have this folder and the other folder that I can refer to, and some of the stuff like world building stuff will move over, some of it will stay here if it's not as pertinent, but I'll still have it in case I need it. And yeah, so the book I am planning now has its own folder. It's gonna be black. I have a red and a purple, now I have a black one, and I guess probably towards the end of Preptober, when I'm done doing all my prepping for my next novel, I can kind of like go through that and show you what that looks like for my newer novel and show you like a more updated version. But I think that this is a really great, it's a really great method. It's always worked for me. I'm going to use this method probably for every book I do. And then I like having all this information. Like for example, like I have this, and then I have a hard copy of the first draft right here, right? And they go together on my bookshelf, and I like having them. So like at one point when they're not, you know, useful anymore to me, or I've finished the book or published it or whatever, like I'll still have these things that have almost a timeline of how the book grew and progressed, and I like that a lot. So anyways, I'm a dork. If you like this video and want to see more of the ways that I am prepping and outlining for my new novel during Preptober, subscribe, because you'll be able to see all the rest of my outlining process throughout the month as I do it, and then you'll get to see my NaNoWriMo vlogs. And like the video if this was helpful to you at all. Have a great day.